What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with some Destiny 2 news in the form of this week at Bungie. So, they have quite a bit of stuff to talk about in the update today. Initially they speak about Vault of Glass, give us a little bit of info about the World First race, exactly when the Vault of Glass is going to launch, and a couple of other interesting pointers. Then they also jump in and speak about weapon archetype changes that we're going to be seeing as part of Season 14, as well as adjustments to perks and mods. And there are some pretty interesting things to round up, so as always guys, I hope you find the video interesting and give us your thoughts about the changes down below, but now let's get into it. And initially they speak about Vault of Glass, and they say that it's going to go live on May 22nd at 10 AM PDT, so that's going to be a Saturday at the daily reset time. And they say the story of the raid isn't changing, we'll once again be fighting Atheon. And the goal was to keep a similar feeling to how you remember it, but we've made some updates to bring this content up to Destiny 2 standards. We don't want to spoil anything, so experience it for yourselves on May 22nd. They do, however, break down the world first race for the raid. So they say since the Vault of Glass is a somewhat familiar experience for a lot of players, it will launch with a contest mode enabled for 24 hours, and you'll need to be at least 1300 power to be at the cap for all of the encounters. Additionally, clearing Vault of Glass with contest mode active is the first step to access the new challenge mode in the Director and the Tempo's Edge Triumph. Completing that triumph, which is a curated list of triumphs in this newly unlocked challenge mode, will be how the fire team crosses the world first finish line and claims their prize. And to enforce the triumph requirements in the challenge mode, your team will wipe if you fail the success conditions during each encounter. That's pretty interesting, and they have made a raid belt for the world first winners for that one. They do say that additional encounter challenges will become available later in the season. And one quick thing to point out is that the opening area for Vault of Glass will now be a private space for your fire team, so don't expect any backup from Wandering Guardians, and we won't be able to abandon the mission and explore Venus, as tempting as it may be. The only path forward is into the Vault. And they do provide an image of the updated Vault of Glass kind of entrance space right here in Destiny 2, so that's pretty cool, and as always, give us your thoughts about it down below. And here they get straight into weapon archetype changes. So they say for precision 450 RPM auto rifles, the subfamily has been falling behind other auto rifles in the tuning over the last year. So damage has been increased to be closer to the time to kill of others. So they're increasing precision damage per bullet from 17 to 18. They also point out that they added a rare machine gun and bow to the world pool over the last season, and they have added existing but unobtainable rare linear fusion rifle and breach grenade launchers to the world loot pool for Season 14. They speak about linear fusion rifles and them being an unpopular choice for PvE, so they explain they want to improve variety in the heavy slot, and they are increasing precision damage by 15% for linear fusion rifles, with increased reserve ammo of 20%. Could definitely make them more popular in PvE right there, especially if we can get some well-rolled ones. And then for fusion rifles, they say they've decided to bring low-range stat fusion rifles up a fair bit, and they've increased damage fall-off start distance for fusion rifles, with no effect on 100 range stat, and plus 2 meters on 0 range stats. So bringing some of those archetypes a bit closer in line with each other right there. And then there are a bunch of changes for Perk. So they say for Subsistence, when they made the perk, they were experimenting with unusual downsides for powerful perks, but ultimately decided that reducing reserves wasn't an interesting trade-off. They also wanted to be able to put the perk on special or heavy weapons, where reducing reserves would feel terrible, and submachine guns were granting a much smaller magazine fraction than auto rifles. So they fixed that at the same time, and the perk no longer reduces reserve ammunition, but also submachine guns now receive the same ammo fraction per takedown that auto rifles do, which was 10% like most weapons, but will now be 17% the same as auto rifles. For high impact reserves and under pressure, they say due to technical constraints at the time they were created, the trigger condition for these is on a projectile impact. And so now the perk will always be active as long as the conditions are actually met. And for Unrelenting, they say it was hard to trigger in difficult content, and health awarded was hard to perceive. And it'll now be easier to trigger in PvE, with immediate trigger on majors and heals 20% more. But for Sympathetic Arsenal, they say it isn't appealing enough for many players as it is, but is useful in niche situations, so they've decided a small buff to sweeten it a little, and it now grants plus 20 reload in addition to its primary effect. Also, Dragonfly will now work on heavy shanks and servitors, and occurs even faster than after in Season of the Chosen when they fixed it. So Dragonfly will now always proc on every enemy that you can finish with a precision hit. But for hipfire grip, they say they're being careful not to overly buff it, but they want to bump this a bit more over the Season of Arrivals buff to make it a more useful option. So they've added plus 1 degrees precision hipfire angle threshold and plus 1.2 times reticle stickiness fall off distance. They say it doesn't sound like a lot, but for reference, hand cannon aim assist cone angle is 2.5 degrees at 0 aim assist to 3 degrees at 100 aim assist. And we can feel the difference in game between a 90 aim assist hand cannon and a 100 aim assist hand cannon. So a small difference can be significant. That's an interesting one. We're also making changes for iron grip, iron gaze and iron reach. And all of the secondary stat penalties on those have been reduced from -40 to -30. So a little bit less harsh. But also, Osmosis and Elemental Capacitor are going to be adjusted, and Osmosis now switches the weapon to Stasis damage when playing a Stasis subclass. And they've also created Stasis VFX for all weapon types that Osmosis can appear on. That's pretty interesting. But also for Elemental Capacitor, with a Stasis subclass, it'll grant plus recoil direction and reduce ADS move speed penalty. So some slightly unexpected changes right there. And it looks like we are going to have access to that Stasis element actually on weapons. They say for no distractions, they want to make it a more appealing option for combating flinch, and they've reduced trigger time from 1.5 seconds to 1 second, and increased flinch reduction from 30% to 35%. But for Celerity and Bottomless Grief, of course, as they've mentioned previously, Celerity will now always grant plus 20 to handling and plus 20 to reload in addition to the triggered effect, with Bottomless Grief granting plus 30 to magazine in addition to the triggered effect. They also have some changes to mods right here, so for Adept Mag and Adept Targeting, they're reducing secondary stat penalties from -20 to -15, and they fixed Adept Mag not granting reserves when applied to a sword. Then for Adept Counterbalance, they say they're increasing the recoil direction benefit, so that mod should be a little bit better than it is right now. There are a couple of exotic changes as well here, so for Mida Multitool, they're changing the Catalyst perk from Outlaw to No Distractions. That could be pretty cool. Of course, Mida already has an insanely fast reload, so it should be more beneficial for sure. And then for Hawkmoon, they've increased priority of Paracausal Charge and Paracausal Shot buff text, as it was sometimes dropping off the bottom of the list. But they say they do want to make additional changes throughout Season 14. And it looks like there could be some minor nerfs to shotguns, or general archetype balancing at the very least, but also for Deadman's Tail, they say with the upcoming nerf to 120 hand cannon range, they expect to see a surge in Deadman's Tail usage. And they say they have a change ready to go that reins in its ability to challenge sniper rifles and 120 hand cannons and scout rifles while in hipfire without detracting from the fantasy of the weapon. But also, they say they're going to keep an eye on fusion rifles and the buff they're introducing at the start of the season, and may have more changes a bit later on in the season. So that rounds up all of the weapon changes that they've broken down for now, but of course, we'll probably get even more information in the patch notes for Season 14 once they drop on May 11th. So, as always, give us your thoughts about that stuff down below. And finally, to finish the video off right here, but we did get a new hotfix for Destiny 2 today. That was hotfix 3113. Bungie hadn't told us exactly what this one was going to be for, although it turned out to be fairly run-of-the-mill, and they fixed occasional crashes when players were loading into the tower. Then otherwise, a problem where the Titan Contender Eververse armor set for Guardian Games would make Titans invisible in first person. Another problem where the Warlock armor set for Guardian Games was losing its glow when certain shaders were slotted in. And the problem where daily Guardian Games bounties couldn't be repurchased on subsequent days after being completed. So, primarily just some fixes for Guardian Games right there. Although next week things are definitely going to get more interesting with reveals presumably for Season 14. So for now, that's everything we've got to round up in the video, guys, but be sure to stay tuned here on the channel and I'll keep you posted with that new info when we get it. So feel free to get subscribed or turn on notifications if you don't want to miss out on any content. But if you've enjoyed this video, be sure to give us any of your thoughts about what we've touched on down in the comments section below. And otherwise, a like rating very much helps us out here as well. However, for now, thanks as always for tuning in, and I hope you have an awesome day.